Hello, my name is Carlos, and I will start now to present my final project. The title of my project is Cool Sports Pool Website. So here the topic is we're going to cover during this presentation. I will do an introduction about myself uh, and also talk a little bit about my motivation to work in this project. I will talk about my goals, so what I want to achieve with this project. Then I start to talk about the design, go through the implementation. I will do a short demo about on this project, and then we can talk about the conclusions and the future work. So here's the introduction. So who am I? As I said, my name is Carlos. I am originally from Brazil and I live in Cork since 2014. I work for Apple as a fraud prevention analyst, and one of my hobbies is to play betting pool with colleagues from work. So, what is the context of this project? The context of the project is a development of a sports pool website. It is a website where users can create private pools and invite friends and colleagues to play. I will talk about more. I'll talk more about that later on. So, what's my motivation for this project? Uh, I have been playing pool for a while, and I noticed that most of the popular websites that provide these sports pool services, they were badly designed. They are not user friendly or intuitive. Then I thought, why not to use this opportunity to work in something that interests me, that will be very challenging for me as well, and has a potential to become something real in the future. So, just a quick introduction about the betting pool. It's a it's a very common form of gambling, but I know that not everyone is very familiar with that. So, betting pool is a form of gambling, and there are different kinds of betting pool, but the one that we have considered for this project is the most traditional one, where the gamblers choose a subject such as a sport competition, for example, Champions League in our case. They put a price in the pool, so let's say €10 for each participant, and then they make a selection of picks for each game of the tournament. The players get points for each correct pick they made, and finally the pool is divided. The total amount of money in the pool is divided by the ones who made more points. It's a pretty safe kind of gambling. There is a very low risk for the participants, and it usually involves a small amount of money. So it's a very social activity because people are talking about football matches all the time, and then they can maybe mock a friend that they are doing better or worse. So that's how it usually works. It's a very friendly form of gambling. So my goals with this project, in terms of the final product, my goal is to develop a user-friendly and intuitive website with an easy navigation system, dynamic, and with as few instructions as possible. The website should be responsive, so it should be okay to be accessed with a mobile device. And one important thing is that the system should be scalable, allowing the additional of other football competitions to be added to the system and even other sports in the future. So I'm gonna talk about the project design, but I'd like first to talk about my project phases. Uh, these are not standard conventional names used in project phases. I put it down here what I believe to be a good description of the most important phases of this project. So the first phases is the definition and the initiation. So it starts with the project context definition along with the project proposal and the initial research on what kind of technology I will need for this project, how I will start to develop it, and so on and so forth. So at this stage, I decided that I would need to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the front end, and PHP and MySQL for the back end. At that time, I had a basic academical knowledge on these subjects, and I thought that it would be a great opportunity for me to code the project from scratch and get as much experience as possible. So the second phase was the implementation. This was when I started to code and implement the functionalities of my project. Here, I need to confess that I did not have a solid plan about the implementation. I was doing bit by bit and doing the research about each of doing the research of how to implement the functionalities that I needed. For each small functionality, I was doing research and then finding some tutorial or the best way to implement it. So that's when I realized two things. First, practically no web developer designs their site from scratch, and they all use a framework with a model view control structural pattern. And the second thing is that I needed to use a framework as well in order to be able to implement at least some of the functionality I was planning. So in other words, I realized that if I kept going the way I was doing, coding everything from scratch, I was not going to be able to design the functionalities that I needed. So the next stage is the redefinition and reinitiation. That's how I call it. This was the time I decided to start the project over again using a model view control based structure. So I found an online PHP structure that implements the MVC pattern. This structure available online. It's called TutsUp. You spell TUTSUP. And this is not a commercial framework. It's more like an idea. It's not an official framework. It's more like an idea available for download on GitHub. And the link is available in my report. So I downloaded it and I started using as a base structure for my code. Then, okay, I start to implement. Then I start to do the implementation all over again. And actually, now we're talking about the implementation of the final version of this project. So that first implementation, I discarded that, I didn't use. And in this second implementation I implemented what I have done so far. And finally, we get the closing, where I evaluated all the work done. I made my conclusions and I started to think about the future of this project. So, okay, just continuing with the presentation. Here we can start to talk about the requirements only very superficially. Excuse me. So we have here in the left side we have the a diagram for the user's requirements. So here I have that the users, they should be able to register, to log into the system and log out, edit user details, browse the web page, create a new pool, edit pool, get their private pool link to invite friends to participate. They should be able also to join the pools that they were invited, check information about teams, check information about matches, search teams and search matches, and check pool results. Here we have the data requirements, and I have here a diagram for the structure of our database. So we have here 7 tables. I will start to talk about the one in the bottom right. It's the users table. So this table, it has attributes common to general user details such as username, password, email. We also have this table, the user session, that will be used by the system to create a session for the user, and user permissions as well, in order to control the permissions for different kind of users. So we're gonna have the admin and we're gonna have the regular users. Then we have the pool invited. This is a table only that has only the ID of the pool and the user invited, or the pool ID and the user ID that was invited. Then you have the pool pick, or actually the pool, we have the pool. It has the pool name and the user ID that are participating in this pool. Then the pool pick, it has the pool ID, the match ID, the user ID, and the match pick. So this is the pool that you're gonna have the information if the player choose, let's say, Liverpool to win against Real Madrid in this specific match. Next we have the matches. This is a bigger table that has all the details about the matches, such as date, results, score, and status. This data is populated via RESTful API connection. This table does not require a manual update, so I will talk more about this RESTful API connection that we have. It's an important part of this project. I'll talk about more about that later on. And it's the same for the teams. This is a table that we created and it's populated using this API. So the design. We are using for this project, we are using the model view controller pattern. The model view controller is an architectural pattern that separates an application into 3 main logical components: the model, the view, and the controller. In other words, it has the function that separates the front end to the back end, from the back end. And I'm going to explain a little bit about this structure. So let's start with the model. The model is responsible for everything related to data, such as create, read, update, and delete information from the database. It is also responsible for any other business logic related functions. And despite all that, model does not display anything to the user nor execute anything on its own. Then we have the view. The view component is what is presented to users. In other words, is what users see on their screen. For example, for this project, we have mainly HTML and JavaScript and CSS and images that will be presented to users. The view has no action of its own, but it requests the model to execute the necessary actions and show the return values to the user. So the view does not need any model and can be used on its own. If, For example, if it's a very simple web page with only HTML and CSS, there is no need for a model in this case. And we have the controller. The controller works as an interface between the model and the view components. It processes all the business logic, manipulating data, using the model, and managing the information shown with the view. So these solid lines, they represent a direct link between them, or direct action, and the dotted lines represent an indirect relation. So in this project, we follow the model view controller architectural pattern, and this image here, it shows the project basic structure. The image shows how the information flow through our system, and here is a short description. So we have the user accessing the website. Well, after, or I'm sorry, before I start to talk about how this information flow through the website, I just want to let you know that these files here that I present, the files and the folders here in this image, they are all from the framework I have used. So this is not the ones shown here. They come with the framework. I will talk about the files and folders that I had to create to implement all my functionality in this website. So let's go on. I will start over again. So the user access the website. The index file includes the config.php file, so it calls the config.php. The config is responsible for register our configurations as well as to load the loader.php file. The loader file, it loads the global functions, which is responsible for keeping of course, the global functions, and also to instantiate the TutSub MVC that controls the early stage of the application. So the class TutSub MVC, it verifies if a controller was required by the URL and included it. So if there is no controller or action required, it will execute the action index. The controller file contains all the actions of that section, and each action will differentiate the models and views requested. The model files contain all the necessary methods to execute the view actions, and the view file will display the information requested by the user. So here, in this slide, we have I just added the file structure of the project. We have the folder classes which contain multiple classes, such as a password hash, which is a class that encrypts the password, the main model and the main controllers. We have the folder controller, which include all the controller files. We have the includes folder that contains only one file, which is the page not found file. The models folder include all our model files. The vendor contains our Bootstrap and some jQuery files, and the view files, of course, contain the view folder. Of course, contain all the view files and some images and some yeah, it's only the view files and the images. Yes. So as I said, we have the base structure used for this project. which is this framework, if we can say that. But it's obvious that there were many files created by me in order to attend the needs of the project. So here in the right side, it's just a few examples. There are many other files that I have created, but here is just to explain very briefly that how the model view control worked with the files that I created. So in this example, the user controller, which is the first file, it calls the user view, which has the content that will be displayed to the user, and the user interact with the elements, and the user model is called to update the information. So that's very basically like how these files interact with each other. So I have here this file. It's a from the model folder. It's called football/football model.php. I wanted to put this in this slide because it's an essential model for this project. This file contains the code that will manage all the information about the football competition. In football mode class, we have the connection to the database, and multiple methods are called that are used. I'm sorry. I start over again this part. So yeah, in the football model, we have the connection to the database and multiple methods that are very important. So I'm gonna mention a few of them. So we have the update teams, which, as the name say, it updates the teams in the database. We have the insert teams match. This insert the match details to the database. We have the update teams match. This updated the match details and the results of these matches to the database. We get the there is, and the there is method, it gets the user's pick for the matches. We get the get picks. This get picks function, it just get picks. I'm sorry, the get picks get the user picks for the matches, and the check win. Yes, and the check win is the function that checks which team win that match and give the points to the player. So okay, another important part of our project is the connection to the REST API app that makes it possible to update the teams and matches information in our system automatically. At the moment, we still need to refresh the integrations page. I will show that later. However, all the information is provided straight from the API. So it means that I don't need to update one by one. Oops, go back here. Yeah. So just a little bit of context on that. At the beginning of the project, I was considering adding the teams and matches details manually to the system. However, as the Champions League is a championship with over 100 matches, it would be extremely inefficient way to add the teams to the system and update the match results. So a solution I found for that was to create a connection to a RESTful web service that provides this information, and with the necessary methods implemented, I was able to populate our system with all the Champions League teams as well as update match results. So after a long research, this implementation started with my registration to the football-data website, which has an API that serves football data. This website provides full documentation with sample code and examples using PHP and also other languages. And that was really handy to me because it was the first time I was developing this kind of connection. So, okay, after this research and after all this all this learning with the codes from that website provide, I start to develop the class football. So the main methods in this class are the here define. Oh, sorry. This first two bullets here, the define the base and define the token. They are both information provided by the API website. When you do your registration, they send you an email with that, and that goes to your config page, to config file. You put these two informations over there. And so, okay, talking about the functions over now, so some functions that we can use with the API is to find the competition by ID. So this function returns a particular competition, based by the ID. We have the find matches for date range, so we can put any range of date and it will find the matches there. Also find matches by computation and match day. So this function returns a match for a give competition and match. We have the public function find match by ID. Okay, we can find the match by ID, and we have the function find team by ID. We also can find the teams with their ID, and the last one is the search team, which return us the team that we are looking for. We can use some keywords there and to search the team. I'm sorry, I have more to talk about here. Oh, okay. So here the part I'm gonna do a quick demo. So let me. Okay, so here we're going to do a quick demo of the website. So here you have the website. At the moment, we have only the Champions League working. There will be also the Premier League and the World Cup. I will sign out. Okay. So let me log in again. Yeah, that's the one. The mail. Oops. Okay, so I just want to show some of the functionalities. We still have a lot of functionalities that I didn't have time to implement. As I mentioned before, I changed the way I was doing this project. So this project it grew a lot. It got way bigger than I expected. So some functionalities, unfortunately, I was not able to implement, but some interesting ones they were implemented. So, for example, we can have the details of the of the Champions League here, on the teams. We can get the ones scheduled to play. So we have here the ones scheduled. The next one is 12, is actually today, the day I am recording. We have Real Madrid, Manchester City against this other team, Valencia against Manchester United. Here are the teams. As I said, this information I got from the API, and I just want to show some functionality here before we keep going with the demo. I have here in my database the pool, the table team. Okay, so I have all the teams over here. So let's delete this information here. So truncate table teams. Go. Okay, so you can see that the table is now empty. If we come here and go back to this page, there is nothing here. Go to schedule, there is nothing because our database is empty. So I want to show that this is done automatically. I go to integration and refresh teams here. So there are 79 teams inserted in the database. So if we check our database again for teams, all the teams are here. And if we go back to our Champions League and see, we have again the teams here. Okay, and the same thing is for the matches as well. We could have the teams, but we could do the same test for the matches. So in this case, if I deleted deleted the information on the table matches, all this information here would disappear, and then I had the possibility of go to integrations and refresh matches. I would get all this information back. The plan for the future is to get this automatically, where there is no need for an admin to come here and refresh this information, but even to have this kind of implementation I was really happy with that, because as I said, first time I worked with an API, and I was expecting I would have to put all the details in the database on my own. So okay, just here we have the games. We can create a pool. So let's create a pool. The name is going to be NCI for our pool. Submit. So we have this table here, the NCI. I could send the link to a friend, for example. So you have here the invitation /57. That's the link for our pool. And here when I access that, if they access that, they have access to this page. And for example, of course, we are not in the beginning of the championship. We should always start the pool in the beginning of the championship, but let's suppose we are, and we would pick our games for pick our result for each game. So for this one, yes, so I picked Real Madrid for this one. This next one, I think it's going to be a draw, and so on and so forth. Okay, we have access to our pools here, all the teams. The results, unfortunately, we don't have any results here because I just created this account and there was no game. If I get any points, I will have the results over here. And of course, if there are more people playing with me in this pool, we will have all the players over here. And the integration. Well, I just finished with this conclusion, with the conclusion, because these presentations get too long. And so the conclusion here is that this project was a big challenge to me. I learned multiple lessons during the process, and some of these lessons were learned from the mistakes that I done. So since the beginning, I have underestimated the size of the project that the project would take in order to achieve the expectations. I was someone with a basic knowledge of web development, and I thought I had some knowledge of most of the technologies that I have used for this project. I had never got any close to the complexity that the project took. The project started as a simple website with a few functionalities, and gradually I was realizing that there was a need to a more robust structure to be able to implement all the functionalities that I had in mind. So a few examples when I had changed plans and decided to add more functionalities that caused extra work are the ones that I'm going to let you know right now. The first one is when I realized that the users, they should be able not only to create their account but also to update them. The second was I realized that a fully functional sports pool website needs to have different permissions for different users. Then also that a professional website needs to use more up-to-date structure, which is the model view control architecture. And for example, another one is when the teams and matches, I decided that the teams and matches, they need to be updated via API and not manually added to the database. So this change of plans, they create a lot of extra work and problems, extra work and problems during the course of the project. I had to do a lot of extra research and learn a new stuff to get them successfully implemented. I debugged a lot and correct a lot of errors. Other errors, some very complex, some not very complex, I could not fix as I run out of time. However, there was also a good side of all this extra work. I have learned a lot. I still might be considered someone with a basic experience in web development, but I have gained a lot of experience during this project. I learned how to work with MVC framework, with Bootstrap, with API web application, and I am now more experienced with database connection. Another advantage of having chosen this more difficult path is that although I have several errors and implementations that still need to be fixed, I have a project that has a structure that resembles a commercial website. It's more robust and better organized and fully scalable. So with the connection to the API from this football-data.org website, it gives me the possibility to add many new competitions to my website with no need to spend hours creating new tables and updating them manually. I always believed in this project, and I am looking forward to keep working on it and see what the future brings. Thank you very much.